Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Today's guest is Ronan Finnegan, who is the co-founder of Spacebands, and we have a really interesting conversation all around technology. Spacebands is a technology company, and Ronan will explain what it is, what the features and the benefits are. But we also speak about some broader trends around technology and safety. What are some of the blockers, particularly around privacy, and what Ronan and his team have done to overcome that? And we finish up with a really well done rallying call from Ronan, which I didn't give him any prior warning of, but I asked him to give us a rallying call around why the health and safety world should embrace technology, and he did a great job with that. Spacebands is launching its new products in July, so do click on the links which we'll put in the show notes to get some more information on that. Follow Ronan as well. And if we've earned it, if you found this interesting and valuable, we'd really appreciate a nice rating and review on whichever medium you are enjoying the podcast on. Hope you enjoy the conversation with myself and Ronan. See you on the other side of the opening credits. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thanks for joining me today, Ronan.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us where you are in the world.
I am based out in Portugal. So I live in a town called Ericeira, just north of Lisbon. I've been here for the last 4 years, but the company I'm running, Spacebands, is UK based, UK staff. But yeah, I just so happen to be out here.
And I thought I'd ask you that because you've had an interesting background and you're kind of something of a digital nomad, if that's the right sort of expression. So how does someone like you that's been doing all this exciting stuff and traveling around the world get involved in the wonderful world of safety?
So it's a big question. So I never anticipated that I'd be working within health and safety specifically. I don't have a background within construction, manufacturing, or any related industry. It just kind of I fell into it almost serendipitously. Because we started the business in COVID. We were initially making a contact tracing wearable, which of course tracked an instance of two people coming together, stored that information, and then with that data, health and safety managers could derive decisions about testing or isolation or building occupancy, hiring, this sort of thing. So it was really, for want of a better word, an opportunistic product at the time, where it came into fruition within a 6-week period, and then it kind of grew exponentially quicker than we were ever imagining. But naturally, it was a pandemic-focused product. So regardless of how it went, it was going to die a death. It was focused on the pandemic, and to extend on that, we pulled it from the market before the pandemic was even closed, because we started to return back to our normal lives, and then it felt somewhat ironic to sell a social distancing product whilst we were no longer social distancing ourselves. So we turned to the customer base of that social distancing product and just said, hey, what do you want us to make? And naturally, those customers were health and safety managers, because they were often left in responsibility for COVID within various workplaces. So the product we're building is a health and safety product, and we've been building this for the last 3.5 years. So I went from zero health and safety knowledge to all of a sudden now I've got knowledge pouring out of my ears. I'm an expert in nothing, but somehow I've been reading government guidelines on health and safety week on week.
That sounds a bit like me to the extent that obviously I'm a bit of an expert when it comes to my little area of slip, strips and falls, but all these other topics that we cover on the podcast and in the webinars and things like that, yeah, it's just kind of taking it in through osmosis and learning and developing. And it's actually a really interesting space and a really impactful space, isn't it, to work in?
Yeah, for sure. Like, it truly does. Yeah, as you said, it has impact. Like, it saves lives by making the right decisions. And there's few roles or job roles that can say that. but it is truly the case. And I didn't even realize that until we started working within it. But yeah, 100%. It's also like it is such a knowledge hungry place to be. Like all health and safety managers are constantly reading through just general inquisitive intuition, but also just because the guidelines kind of mean that you have to read, because if you don't read, you're outdated in what you're doing. So it's an interesting place to be for sure.
Yeah. So as somebody who's kind of come from more of an entrepreneurial and a technology focused background, if we just take a sort of step back slightly from what exactly you guys are doing now, what are the big trends that are kind of exciting you or worrying you when it comes to kind of technology and particularly, I suppose, those that could have an impact on the world of safety?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest worry for technology is that we're becoming so connected, and everything's becoming so seamless and so easy to integrate from one thing to the next, that often technology is forgetting about privacy, and not just in the form of what we're doing, but just generally, like your apps are sharing data with other apps, your advertisers are sharing data with other advertisers. So you click one login and all of a sudden you're logged into 10 other things. So the biggest concern is probably around that privacy element, that people are not always aware of everything that's happening behind the scenes with their data. I mean, us as a company, this is like something we really double down on and make sure that we don't intrude on people's privacy where we don't need to. But just holistically in technology, that's probably my biggest concern. But there's also so many positives in the fact that technology grows so quickly. Like I've been building technology for the last 11 years. Just the speed of execution from building something 11 years ago to building now is like, it's like another world, because there's so many tools, there's so many different things that you can utilize. People understand technology a lot more than they did previously when I was building things, and it's an exciting space to be, because most problems nowadays have been fixed with technology. There's only a select few that still need to be resolved. But of course, like the privacy elements and the overstimulation elements of having it all just so accessible, it's probably the biggest worry in the short term.
Yeah. And there's been quite a strong focus in the last 18 months on AI, and sort of almost the word technology becomes kind of synonymous with AI, but obviously there's a lot more going on than just that. What do you see as that kind of balance between AI as a subset of technology and the other areas? And in terms of these developments and trends, obviously AI is kind of not in its nascency, but it is nascency in its mass market phase, whereas some of these other things are much further along. I mean, how much further is there to go with the sort of non-AI technology?
I mean, we are at the very start of the curve of AI coming into its own. Like the technology, AI has been around for 50 years, right? But as you said, the commercialization of AI is like we haven't even started. Like even just look at the way that we receive technology. Right now, we're using phones, we're using screens. AI will mean that eventually everything becomes voice commanded, or everything becomes touch, or everything becomes biometric stuff, because the knowledge base, the data means that we won't need to interact with it so much. It will all just be so seamless. And that sounds like such a foreign concept when you think about it right now. But give it 5, 10, 20 years, we'll forget that a phone is like was part of our daily lives. And that is ridiculous to say when it seems like something that's so connected to you today. But in the same way that you would never have perceived a desktop computer to be able to turn into a phone or a laptop that you could use in the air on a plane. Like we're at like the very start of this crazy curve that's gonna
and remember, it wasn't that long ago that planes didn't exist either, if you know what I mean.
Even though
I went recently to watch this really fascinating, I don't know what the right word for it is, but it's they're called moonwalkers, and it's at the place called Lightroom in King's Cross in London, and it's basically a big box room, and they project a film onto all four sides of the room. And this one was about the moonwalkers, but it just showed. I think it was a speech by John F. Kennedy, and it showed the kind of timeline of humanity, and it condensed it into I think a 24-hour clock or something. And what he said was, was it condensed it into a year. And it was like, so a year ago we were living in caves and doing this, and then 2 weeks ago we were um, the Industrial Revolution, and then 2 days ago we were launching a flight, and just really interesting to kind of condense that
The life
development of
cycle,
technology.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you're using this stuff every day, it feels like it's been around for eternity.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're living in the Wild West.
In terms of health and safety, what would you say in your experience and I guess research you've done and stuff would be some of the blockers or the challenges around adoption of technology?
Sorry, I'm just getting a call here. Yeah, I mean, I think because health and safety is such a specialist topic as a whole, often technology is built by health and safety managers for the health and safety space. And of course, this has like huge benefits in that it can be really niche or really specific, or it can deal with like small issues really, really well. But because it's approached from this health and safety as the priority as opposed to technology as the priority, it means that it's often not very user friendly, or it's often not very, I don't know, maybe a little bit brash, but it's often not as well thought through as it could be, because it's dealing with the specific need for a specific health and safety manager who had this specific problem in this specific industry, who all of a sudden has gone, wait a second, I can resolve this with technology. But they're not building it from like a intelligent perspective in a technology sense. In health and safety, sure, bountiful intelligence and far past my knowledge base, but the technology is not like intuitive. It's not easy to use. It's often not connected to other bits of technology. It's not using the latest tools, the latest means of developing. So it means that it's quite slow moving, and it might resolve this one issue, but it won't look at the issue in a wider way, or it won't look at the issue from a different perspective than the health and safety manager. For example, they might not think of the end user of the product. They might not think of the factory worker. Instead, they're thinking about the health and safety manager. So then maybe the reporting's really good, but the actual use of the product's not, or vice versa. They're looking at a health and safety manager who's got specific expertise within loud noise. So it's all so doubled down on loud noise, but then they haven't actually realized that the loud noise that the way to collect the loud noise data is actually like a whole experience in itself. So I think that often, yeah, it's both for good and for bad that health and safety managers have built health and safety technology, because as I said, it's served a purpose in the short term, but it's a unique space where there's a way of doing it better just by approaching it from a kind of neutral view. And we've had the benefit of being able to build it with our technologist hat on of some sorts, but also the health and safety expertise has come from our existing customer base with our contact tracing wearable. So we had this unique space of time where we could ask experts within health and safety for feedback on health and safety problems, but we could answer them with technology. Because I hold my hands up and say, I'm not a health and safety manager. I don't have that knowledge. So I was forced, and my other co-founder was forced to ask these customers, hey, look, we're trying to resolve this problem. How would you approach it?
Yeah, it's very interesting the way you've answered that, because I really, it resonates with me what you've said. But equally, I can sometimes see the flip side as well, which is let's move away from safety and speak about insurance a little bit, which is obviously a market that I kind of work in as well. So there's this thing called insurtech, just as there's a thing called safety tech. And what you see in the insurtech space is kind of the opposite of what you've explained, which is these really clever tech people have kind of come up with these all singing, all dancing, fantastic products and SaaS businesses. But actually, they don't really solve the problem that is prescient enough and important enough for it to be worth the insurance company kind of running with, if you know what I mean. So I think the way you've balanced it is quite clever, because you do need both sides. Otherwise, things will, inevitably go wrong. And I suppose the other thing I'd add in, and I'm interested in your view on this, is, I see a lot of examples of companies trying to build their own tech, and that almost inevitably ends up in a bad way, in my experience. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, for certain. And then to kind of answer that question in a two-pronged way. Like if we were going to try and build a health and safety consultancy, let's say, without health and safety knowledge, it would go awfully, right? Because you're just like you wouldn't be able to answer the questions for the health and safety role because you don't have the answers. In the same way that if you're trying to build a technology as a health and safety manager, you don't have the right tools or the right knowledge to be able to do it effectively. So it goes both ways, and you just have to, I guess, use the skills that you have or the knowledge that you have, and if not, ask questions of those that do. But yeah, it's just health and safety just as a whole. It's such a niche, specific industry that's got so many small details that you don't see from the surface.
Yeah,
you might see that tracking temperature within a workplace just looks like, all right, cool. You just go on site and you put a thermometer around. But like the reality is that's not the case at all. You need different ways of measuring it. You need different time periods. You need to have it in different places in the warehouse, different places on a site. The weather might impact your readings, and like this is just collecting the data, right? Once you've got the reporting, there's 101 which ways that you put it into graphs, 101 which ways that you might present it to the C-suite, as opposed to presenting it to the governing body, as opposed to presenting it to the union, or like this. There's so many details that you just, it takes years and years and years of experience and years and years and years of conversations to be able to get that. Like I'm still not at that level, but health and safety managers, of course, are often.
Yeah. And what you've identified there about the data is a topic that I often pick up on, which is I use the analogy of data being like oil. So that expression is used to say that data is like this really valuable thing, which obviously it kind of is. But I think what sometimes people miss when on that expression is that oil is only valuable once it's been refined, and there's a whole skill set around how to refine the oil to make it usable. And it's the same with data, isn't it? You can have the data coming out of your ears, but as you said there, if it's not quite right, or you don't really know how to use it, and you don't know how to present it, and how to get those insights from it, then it isn't really as valuable as people think.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy. I've never heard that before, but that is genius. Because you're right, it becomes, without some level of refinement or reporting elements of a raw data set, it is just numbers and letters on a page that mean nothing.
And there is a value there, but only to the right person.
Yeah, 100%.
There you go. Well, just remember to credit me whenever you use that analogy.
Deal.
So in terms of, you mentioned privacy as being something that kind of you're concerned about. Other than that, from the perspective of the users, or the health and safety profession, the users of technology, what other kind of inhibitors are there from a sort of personality, philosophical perspective? Is it kind of, is there some fear? Is there sort of a worry about the robots are coming to replace us all? Is there stuff around a lack of knowledge? Is there anything like that we should be aware of in order to, I suppose, enable the profession to become more technologically advanced or technologically savvy?
Yeah, I mean, I think often health and safety managers are impacted by those in other roles, like more than probably other positions would be. So what I mean by that is like the health and safety manager's execution of improving a particular hazardous area or field often needs impact from the construction worker, from the factory worker, from the administrative person, from there's other roles that because it's such a strategic role, there's other jobs that impact the strategy, whereas the implementation might be done by the health safety manager, but the actual execution will be done by someone entirely different, and could be by someone like it could be 10,000 factory workers that their strategy is changing. So in order to do that and execute on that, the biggest barrier that at least we found from our perspective is getting trust between the health and safety manager and the end user. We call them the end user, but the health safety managers, the employee. That even if the strategy is 10 out of 10 and it's all thought through and it's mathematical and it's analytical and it's detailed and it's got years of experience and expertise, if the construction worker doesn't trust the health and safety manager's view, nothing's going to change. Like nothing will ever change. And this applies both just in general day-to-day workings that the health and safety manager might say to someone, hey, you all need to wear hard hats today. But if there's not trust, there's not rapport, there's not like emotional intelligence in the interaction, then no one's going to be wearing their hard hats. You'll get one or two people who are jobs bodies and they do their job right as a construction worker because, I don't know, they want a pay rise or they want to leave work early that day. But everyone else will just be like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't trust the health and safety manager's view here. And then the same rule applies for technology. If you implement new technology, whether it's our technology or someone else's technology, you still need to get that trust there. Otherwise, no one's going to use it. No one's going to benefit from it because at the end of the day, we're all humans who need trust or need knowledge from someone else to be able to better ourselves or better the way that we're doing things. So yeah, I'd say the biggest prohibitor for a health safety manager is getting that trust and getting that rapport. And that takes like time. It's not just it's not just like a relationship or an interaction. It's you have to do the right things again and again and again for someone else to go, hey, wait a second, this person is making the right decision. So yeah, they can improve our processes by doing X or Y.
Yeah. I mean, the way to fast track. Yeah, I do. And I think the way to fast track that, or not such fast track it, because it does take time, but the thing you have to bear in mind is what's in it for me, as in not what's in it for you as the health and safety professional, but the person that you're trying to engage with to get them to do something differently or better or whatever, is asking the question, what's in this for me? And that's the main question that everyone asks, because fundamentally, we're all selfish individuals. We're hardwired to look after ourselves and protect ourselves and our own interests. So you've got to have that kind of empathy and understanding of, what are these people trying to achieve? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? What are their fears? And how can we enable them to get to where they want to get to, or move away from what they want to move away from, or whatever it is? But figuring out kind of what's in it for them, and whatever we want to change, we want them to make is, explaining it to them and influencing them so that they feel like it's in their best interest. And that's kind of how you can get that to work. Not that that's an easy thing to do, as you say, it takes time, but that's kind of the philosophical way that I approach it.
Yeah, 100%. We actually found a really, really interesting thing when we started doing trials of this new product that we're building. We've been on site now with multiple customers to make sure the technology was serving the purpose that we built it for. And what we found is the most effective way to get people to use the product, in our case, is early on with trust, is telling them what the product doesn't do before telling the product what the product does. And I imagine the same rule probably applies to services as well. So you'd say, in our case, like we're building wearable technology, and we'll go into the details of what we're doing in a little bit. But they say, hey, look, this doesn't listen to your conversations. This doesn't track your productivity. This doesn't track your location. This doesn't track X, Y, Z. Before they go in and say, oh, by the way, yeah, this is the feature that we're doing. This is the way that we're approaching it. These are the roles that are going to be impacted. Because it's just about trust. You don't if you don't have a guard up, you can understand you can receive the information without like hesitance.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way of approaching it. I'll have to think about how to implement that in my business as well. Good.
Yeah, like even in like trips and falls. Like if you tell people like, oh yeah, we're going to stop you having trips and falls, they're like, okay, cool, great. But you could say like, by not having trips and falls, this is what the workplace could look like. You like paint the picture of paradise, and then come to explain how paradise will eventually happen.
No, I love that. I'm gonna go away and
you can
have a think about that. So you mentioned trips and falls. Let's move into a bit more detail of what Spacebands is up to. So in terms of kind of I don't know that trips and falls is one of them, but some of the kind of key hazards that through your research and your trials and or your general sort of knowledge, what are the kind of key hazards you've spotted where perhaps the traditional way of dealing with them has only taken us so far, and technology can complement those traditional methods to achieve better outcomes?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll just very, very briefly give an overview of what we're doing. So as I mentioned, we came up with this concept through speaking to health and safety managers who were using our first product. So the USP, or the unique selling point of the product, we found was to build technology that could cover multiple hazards within a health and safety manager's job role, and multiple bits of data that they could use to inform decisions about training, hiring, building occupancy, consultancy spend, all that sort of stuff. But the technology we're building is a wrist-worn wearable used by every single employee within a workplace. So it tracks in real time when hazard events are unveiling themselves. It then stores that data completely offline. The device has no GPS, has no internet on it. It's very, very simple. It just has sensors that collect this data. And obviously, of course, in real time, tell users, hey, look, there's a forklift about to run you over, move out the way. Or, hey, look, it's too hot to work outside today, go inside, whatever else it might be. I'll explain the features in a second. And then we have another piece of hardware that we call a beacon, which we place onto vehicles in the workplace or access points, so doorways or doorways or exits. So when you walk through a certain part of the site, it might warn you to wear PPE, or it might tell you that you're in an unauthorized access zone, you need a certificate to be there, or it might, if you're in a forklift, it might tell you you need to be a forklift driver or whatever else. And then we have a charging station where we send our data that's been collected from the day. Of course, as I mentioned before, it's all offline, so the data doesn't get sent until the device is put on charge. And that charging station sends the device up where you can analyze it in our mobile app or dashboard. So the features that we're covering are bountiful. Like there's 20 features that we're developing behind the scenes. We're launching in July with 6 of these. But we'll slowly drip feed the other ones in. They're more or less all developed by this point, but we're just testing them again and again and again to make sure that they're as accurate and as reliable as they can possibly be before we go for a widespread launch. But we are tracking loud noise, so the device will beep and vibrate if it gets over a certain decibel threshold. So our default is 85 decibels, but you can customize the parameters, you can customize every setting, every feature, the setting to make it relevant to your workplace. We give PPE prompts, so it can tell you when you walk on site to wear your hard hat. It can tell you as you walk into a certain zone, hey, you need to wear your gloves, or you need to wear your chemical coat, or you need to wear your eye mask. We have unauthorized access warnings that you can mute if you have the permissions to be able to be in that zone. For example, you're a manager who has access to the entire factory. You can walk through without an alert. But if you are just a factory worker, you'll have an alert every single time you go through this area to say, hey, the device is beeping and alerting, you need to get out of this unauthorized access zone. And then we have certification checks, similar premise, as I mentioned before, with the forklift warning, or if you're in a certain machine zone, it may say, hey, you need to be a level 3 technician to be using this tool. We have, what else? Attendance monitoring, building occupancy, stretching prompts if you're sat down for too long, HAVS warnings, hand-on vibration, temperature warnings if it gets too hot or too cold, overworked hour warnings. There's, as I mentioned, there's 20 odd features. So there's a list somewhere in the back of my brain, but I'm forgetting which ones I've already said.
Yeah. Nice, and that so that's a really comprehensive suite. And I guess you've been sort of trialing it and piloting it in some locations in the meantime. Can you share kind of some of the insights or successes or outcomes that you've achieved?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the greatest insight we got was by running these trials was that element of trust that I've mentioned before, is that to position the product correctly, we needed to be able to know how to speak about it so that it could be trusted. Like, we've built it so that it should be trusted, as I kind of also alluded to earlier, that it's private by design. The system works completely offline. It doesn't track productivity, it doesn't track location, it doesn't track, even for that matter, who's wearing it. You pick up a different device at the beginning of any day from the charging station, so the end user, the employee, knows that, hey, my boss can't actually tell if I've been in this zone or that zone, because tomorrow I'm going to pick up a different device. And even if they could track the data, there's no location data on the device to be able to get that. But to share that with someone who hasn't seen the product before, it's hard to get that trust and rapport, because we always perceive technology as this like incredible intelligence,
big brother thing.
Like your phone does everything, so why can't a wrist-worn watch do the exact same thing? Like, we've almost been taught the opposite of what we're trying to explain. So the biggest learning for us was getting that trust, and then past that was being sure that the alerts were as, I guess, reliable as possible without being annoying, because we have the sensors that we have in the device like high spec. We can make them super sensitive. We can have the device alerting anytime the loud noise event is happening But what that would mean is that whenever there's a bang from a machine, you get a loud noise event. So it's like fine tuning the features so that they're collecting the data where it's relevant, but they're not a nuisance. Where it's not just going off every 5 seconds to the point where people say, "Hey, look, this technology isn't serving. It's not helping me. It's not serving me. Instead, it's just."
And they're just not gonna pick it up and wear it if it's annoying them.
Yeah, exactly that. And then past the actual like wearable technology, the thing that we've really got better at just for the course of running these trials is being able to report the data in a good way, in a way that's understandable, rather than giving all of it. Kind of speaking about your oil thing earlier, like giving all of the details and just giving this, hey, look, we've got 1,000 hazard events here, only displaying those that are relevant or those that are over a threshold or those that are happening repetitively, so that a health and safety manager can log in and within 2 minutes go, wait a second, we're getting loads of PPE triggers here. Why is no one wearing their protective equipment? Or wait a second, the forklift's always running into people. Oh, that's this forklift. Okay, we need to have a word with the driver of this forklift. So it's giving data that's effective rather than just giving data for the sake of giving data, which was learning. Like we didn't know that was going to be the case until we started doing these trials and had to develop and redevelop again and again.
Yeah. And so from a safety manager perspective, then it's about a better understanding, but I guess it's also about prevention, because you're going to be turning near misses into hopefully non-near misses through leveraging the technology, right?
Yeah, exactly. So real time, it prevents the hazard from taking place. Like, the forklift analogy is the best one we can give, right? Is that if there's a forklift 3 meters behind you and your device is vibrating and alerting, saying, hey, look, this forklift's getting closer, it's getting closer, you know to move out the way, you prevent yourself being run over. Great. But if that just happened in real time, like we all forget about these things 10 minutes later. So there's no reason to go and tell the driver at the end of the day, hey, look, you've had 4 near misses today, because no one's realized you've had 4 near misses. It's just the dynamics of these busy working environments where people are moving around, people are doing different roles, people are concentrating on one thing and other things happening on their right hand side. So the data is where you can prevent the future by looking at the past without even needing to really have much impact on your side. You just pull up this dashboard and go, okay, well, this thing's a problem. Or like, it might not even be telling an individual that they're doing something wrong. It might just be saying like, hey, look, as a company here, you're all entering the unauthorized access zone. There's a reason we've got a wide 5 meter radius around the crane. It's because it's dangerous. Like, we're all going to sit here today. The cranes are dangerous. This is why. And then next week, the crane events don't happen. So it's using that data, but for benefit rather than just data for the sake of data.
Yeah. And I guess the potential developments of this are, I mean, they're not limitless, but they're significant, right? You could take this, in all sorts of different directions and add more and more features and benefits into it. So I'm sure it's the start of an exciting journey.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we future-proofed the hardware, like the physical form device with a bunch of sensors inside of it, so that we can just keep extending the feature set. The real benefit of this product is the fact that it's multi-feature. It's the fact that it's protecting against all hazards. You don't need to be wearing an ear tool to monitor loud noise alongside having a temperature monitor in the warehouse, alongside having a lone worker tag, alongside having a phone app. Like, there's no reason to have this all disconnected, but then when you're trying to analyze the data, you can't see a trend between X or Y. You don't realize that your loud noise events are happening because actually the forklift's getting too close to people every time. Instead, you think it's, there must be some dormant noise in the warehouse somewhere. But when you look at the data and you say, wait a second, there are forklifts getting close to people and loud noise, they're always happening at the same time. Okay, well, we need to make the tracks in the warehouse bigger so that people aren't getting so close to it. And this is just one example of many. Like, the device, right now it will have about 20 features ready to go, and we'll drip feed these in as and when they're ready. But that feature set will go probably to 50.
Yeah, I suppose what is really interesting about this as well is that you've got the kind of ability to do these kind of micro level, site level insights, but also I'm sure you've thought about this. You can be comparing and contrasting across industries, across geographies, across comparison of sites of a similar size in different sectors. There's all sorts of other ways to benchmark performance as well, which I think is really quite exciting as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, gamifies performance in a way, and it gamifies performance in this private first way. Like the end user is protected. Like there's no employee names in the system to say, oh, you've done this badly, you've done this well. Instead, it's just this holistic company data to say, hey, look, this is the industry standard, this is what you can do, this is how you can do it. Or you can also truly see the impact of the changes that you make. As a health and safety manager, sometimes you don't know if putting up that sign or by executing that training actually had an impact. So you might have a bunch of consultancy spend that you have in your budget, but you don't really know if it's having an impact. Tools like spacebands, you can clearly see that like that hazardous event is not happening as frequently, or it's only happening in this area, so you need to change this area. You can get very specific and you can get very results driven.
Love it. So last couple of things. What would be, I didn't tee you up with this, so apologies, but give us a bit of a rallying call for why the health and safety profession should embrace technology.
Yeah, I mean, technology is built to make our lives easier, right? That's the main point of it. It's so that we're not doing repetitive tasks again and again. We're not spending our lives doing administration. We don't need to do that anymore. We're not using pen and paper in the same way that we used to. And the impact of technology is not just the work of one person. And what I mean by that is, as a health and safety manager, you only have a certain amount of hours in your day between speaking to people and getting that trust, which, as I said, is like probably the most important part of the role, alongside trying to implement analytics of working out what you should be doing, or trying to read the latest guidelines, or trying to do training yourself, or trying to train other people. You literally cannot do everything at once. So it's intelligent to be able to use technology to assist you. Like, you're still going to have your role. In my perspective, technology will never be able to replace a health and safety manager, regardless of how good we can make this thing. If we don't serve that human interaction, we don't have that emotion, we don't have that intelligence that's not just like numbers on a screen.
Yeah.
So we're there to assist, we're there to aid. It's like the data that we can provide is learning for the end user, the employee, or for the health and safety manager. So the health and safety managers should do that, whether they use spacebands, whether they use some other technology. I'm indifferent. Like, of course, we'd love to help, but it doesn't make a difference. It's about using the tools that we have in the modern day to be able to make your life easier. We don't need to be working 16-hour days anymore, stressed out of your mind, where you're not effective just for the sake of showing up. And like, technology can do half of that stuff for you, and then you can spend your time doing the work that matters, as opposed to just doing the work that you should be doing but you're not really executing on properly.
Yeah, love that. Thank you for that. And considering I didn't warn you about that, that was a good answer. So well. So you mentioned the launch in July. Where should people go for more information, and where's the best place to kind of follow you, get in touch if they've got questions or anything like that?
Sure. So our website is www.spacebands.com, spacebands.com. And the best place to contact me will either be on there or on LinkedIn. My name is Ronan Finnegan. It says on my profile that I'm the co-founder at Spacebands. And yeah, more than happy to run a demo. We're running free trials at the moment for all new customers. So we'd love to either come on site or just send you a device that you can literally turn on, plug and play, and you're good to go. It will start tracking your data, but it will start tracking your data in this private manner where everything's anonymous, where you can choose what you're capturing, you can choose what you're hiding, this sort of stuff. So it's a very exciting time. We've been building this for the last 3 years, and we're certain now that we've been on site with various customers that this product works. Like it really does work. And I'm excited to be able to say that when it's taken so long to get it to this point. But yeah, it will save lives, which is a good place to be in.
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Well done. Wishing you all the best for July, and thanks very much for joining me today on the podcast.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.